It says we're live.
All right, today we are talking to, yeah, today we're talking to Spencer's 4 daughters, Veronica, Sophia, Alexandra, and Polina, and his wife is there hiding out too. So before we get started with questions, let's see. We met because we both follow the NBA. Spencer's a fan of the Utah Jazz, and Ricky Rubio is my favorite player, and he was there at the Jazz for a while. And so I mentioned, hey, we're doing, I want to talk to people from other countries, and he was kind enough to talk to us. So tell us a little about who you guys are and what are you doing in Kazakhstan?
Well, we are a family. Yeah, obviously. I'm originally from Utah, and I met my wife, Yulia, when we were living in Ukraine. She's originally from Russia. So we got married, and I was in the Army for 9 years and did a bunch of stuff, then decided I wanted to do something different. So I went to school and got a PhD in political science. And one of the jobs that was available was a job in Kazakhstan. And so we jumped the opportunity to go and make sure our kids learned to speak Russian and could be close to Yulia's family in Russia here, and just have an adventure. So we have lived here in Kazakhstan for the past 6 years, just about.
Cool. That's awesome. And so what is it that you do there in Kazakhstan?
So I teach at a university here. It's an American-style university. The students are the top students from the country. They all come here on scholarships. So it's kind of like the Harvard of Kazakhstan, where all the best and brightest students come, and we teach them in English as they would at a university in America. So many of my colleagues are Americans, others from Europe, but most of us have our PhDs from the United States. So I teach classes, and I do research and write research articles and all that kind of professorial stuff. What do you girls do?
So the first question, yeah. School. So 6 years ago, so you guys were what, from like 6 to 9 or so?
Yeah.
When you found out you were moving? What was that conversation and decision like?
We only found out, we just found out, and they were like, okay, we're moving to Kazakhstan. We didn't really process it, really.
Did you know where Kazakhstan was?
We didn't know what Kazakhstan was, and so we had to look at it on the map every single day.
But it's not, these guys had been to Russia twice by that time in their life, so it's not like they'd never been anywhere.
Well, yeah, but Kazakhstan, yeah,
But
those close to Russia.
But you just kind of got told that that's what was happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it hard to? My family's in the process of moving right now, and my daughter is 7 and my son is 5, and I know, like, finding out, we're going to be switching schools and move, and going away from our friends. That's hit them pretty hard. They've been good sports about it, but that's been a difficult thing. And we're staying in the same state. I can't imagine being that age and going to the other side of the world. So you mentioned school. What's school like for you in Kazakhstan?
We did 2 years public school, which was good until the educational system crashed. And then now we're homeschooled.
What happened when the education system in Kazakhstan crashed?
It's corrupt.
Well, they were going to the local school, and the city where we live is growing very fast, very, very quickly, and it's very, very young. And so our kids were part of a baby boom, and that the two youngest started first grade, and in their school, there were how many? 13 other first grade classes with 25 students in them, just in the first grade.
Oh man.
Yeah, so 25 to 30.
That's huge.
Yeah. So they were learning on two different schedules. So they had an afternoon schedule and a morning schedule, and our kids were, at least one kid was always on a different schedule. So that was hard on the family. And
oh, I bet.
And the education system here was going through a lot of changes. In an authoritarian state, whenever the government decides to make a change, they make changes very, very quickly, and they don't often tell people. And so things were changing, and not necessarily for the better. So we decided to homeschool them, although you girls had a good experience in general school.
Yeah. And we were able to learn Russian better.
Yeah, they really learned Russian really well, because they just kind of got thrown into the deep end, having to speak Russian from day one.
Yeah, I bet. So is Russian one of the languages? So one of the questions is, what's the main language there in Kazakhstan?
It's Russian.
Is it Russian?
It's Russian and Kazakh mixed together. So it's mostly the older generation speaks Kazakh, and then the younger generation speaks Russian, and then some people go to Kazakh schools, and so they learn mostly Kazakh, and then others go to Russian speaking schools, so they learn mostly Russian.
So both languages are official. And it's about 50-50 in terms of people who speak which natively, and then there are some people that speak both. Most people speak both to some degree. Our kids went to a Russian language school, so they mostly learned in Russian, but they had a Kazakh class where they didn't learn much Kazakh.
Well, to be fair, I took 3 years of Spanish in high school, and the only thing I got out of it was some college credit. So, I can commiserate with them and having a language class and not learning much language. Let's see. What about food? What are your favorite foods? Well, first of all, what are your favorite American foods, and can you eat? Are you able?
Well, to think about American foods is sort of hard, because American foods are like many different foods from other cultures, just like sort of mixed together. But here is horse meat and was it camel milk?
Shabbat.
That's not favorite.
That's not your favorite.
But horse meat is pretty good.
Yeah. They also have bish barmak, which is
that's
good.
horse meat.
It's horse meat with onions and dough.
Mm-hmm.
You guys like their national.
Okay, so
Go ahead. I was going to say their national food.
Their national what?
Is like horse meat mixed with some dough, and vegetables and noodles. Then there are a lot of things here from Western China, Uyghur dishes. No, Lachon, which is a kind of a noodle and meat dish that's from Western China. And then a lot of Russian food here too. So a lot of meat and potatoes and dumplings and salads of various kinds with vegetables. So it's a mixture of things here. But what's your guys' favorite?
I like Italian food and Asian food and Mexican food, and basically I like all food.
Yeah.
I love all food.
All food.
There's too much variety.
We do a variety. We cook a little bit of everything and eat a little bit of everything. And we've been able to travel a lot while we've been here. So we've tried foods from other countries while we've lived here. So our girls are pretty adventurous eaters. They like just about everything.
I didn't.
Let's see. We didn't.
Anyone? What the craziest thing you've got?
Oh, the craziest thing we've eaten.
It was
the
fermented camel milk.
No,
not horse milk.
Fermented
Camel's
horse
milk is okay to some degree. It's just sour. But fermented horse milk is like drinking beer.
I thought it tasted like kerosene.
Fermented horse milk.
Fermented horse milk. That's because the Kazakhs were a nomadic people and they had horses, and so their dishes consist of horse meat, and the fermented horse milk was the drink that they'd carry with them. So it's still very popular. So it's one of the things they try to get everybody who comes here to try, and we tried it and didn't need to try it anymore.
Here's a question from Amanda about schools. So in American schools, we address our teachers by Mr. or Mrs. and their last name. How would you address your teacher when you were going to school in Kazakhstan?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, so we would use their last name for what they have
First name, their first name and their patronymic, which is their middle name. It's their father's name with an ending.
So like.
So what was your teacher's name?
Aynur Muratovna.
Aynur Muratovna. And your teacher was?
Oh, we had two. There was Lyudmila Sergeyevna and Karina Skarovna.
And your teacher was?
Aizhana Busina and Ksenia Viktorovna.
Yeah. So they call your teachers by their first name and their middle name, and that's the formal way to address people.
Interesting. Do they have like a last name in Russia, or is it? Well, you said there's a middle name, so obviously there's a last name.
Yeah.
But the first name and middle name, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. What are some traditions that are in Kazakhstan that are, different than what we have in the United States?
Let's see.
Oh, they have a game where there are two people on horses, usually a man and a woman, and the man chases the girl, and if he catches her, he kisses her. If he doesn't catch her, then she runs around with a whip and tries to whip him.
Yeah. So
modernly, it's usually just a boy and a girl just chasing each other around doing that. But if it's more traditional, then they actually have real horses.
Yeah.
And real whips.
Real whips, yes, real whips.
But there's a holiday called Nowruz, which is
spring.
New Year's. No. But anyway, it's the 22nd of March. And we would play it in our classrooms, and so we would just run around a circle, and if we caught up to the boy, then our teacher would give us a flower, and we'd have to whip them with the flower.
So it's like duck, duck, goose with gender roles, kind of?
Oh, yeah, or duck, duck, goose. But Yeah, kind of a kissing tag with consequences.
Yeah.
And so is it mainly like a kid game, or is it like a thing grown-ups do too?
More teenagers would do that. It's one of the courting rituals that's turned into a game now that they play.
New Year's.
The big holiday here is New Year's. Because it's a Muslim country, they don't really celebrate Christmas. And during the Soviet Union, they didn't celebrate Christmas. And so the big holiday is New Year's, and that's when Grandfather Frost comes and brings presents on New Year's Day with his niece, Little Snowflake, his granddaughter, Little Snowflake. Yeah. What other traditions?
Go ahead, Sophie. Help.
Oh, back.
It's working?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sophie, help you, okay? Sorry, I'm home with all of my kids right now too. So
It's the way of the world now.
yeah. Speaking of how the world is right now, how has there you go. How has COVID-19 affected your area there?
Well, we're on the low end of cases. We've got about 6,000 cases in the country, but when they had their first case, they shut things down very, very quickly, and they closed all the borders. And the main cities, so the city we live in and some of the other main cities, they actually have quarantine, so nobody in or out. They have the military at the roads guarding, making sure that nobody's coming in or out. And we were locked down completely for 6 weeks, pretty much. Now we can go out during the day and walk around. We just have to socially distance from each other, wear a mask whenever we're in a store, a public place with people. And they're opening up things kind of slowly, but the government here was very, very proactive, and because it's an authoritarian government and just one boss, basically the whole country has had the same rule the whole time. So it's probably a good thing because the healthcare system isn't great here. So they wanted to make sure that they didn't have a big problem because their healthcare couldn't handle a lot of sick people.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it sounds like, Gabe, can you do that upstairs, buddy? Can you take that upstairs with Sophie? She's in her room. She will help you. Thank you, buddy. Downstairs. Well, why don't you play with in the other room then, okay? My 2-year-old is trying to play with the remote control car right next to me. So if that gets noisy, that's what the strange noise is.
I thought it might be a drill.
So your lockdown sounds much more intense. Yeah. Your lockdown sounds a lot more intense. You had you had like soldiers on the streets, keeping people from going places, it sounds like.
Yeah, lots of police. We live on campus, and we had guards here that were making sure people weren't out after a certain time when we could walk around, and making sure people wore masks. And so it was quite intense.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Hey, Sophie, can you help Gabe? He's trying to play with the race car. Why don't you play with him upstairs or outside or something, okay?
Yeah. I'm gonna put this stuff away because these are like moths.
Okay, but then you play with Gabe? Okay. Let's see. So what you talked about the authoritarian government a little bit, but what's the temperature like there?
Very cold.
What's the weather like?
In the winter, it can get below negative.
Very cold in the winter?
It's the same in Celsius and Fahrenheit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so very cold winter,
Very
Oh, below negative.
and warm summers. Like right now, we're in the low to mid 80s now, which is a little bit warmer than usual. This time of year, we're a little bit warm early. The summers get into the mid 90s, but it's a shorter summer. Summer usually lasts from mid-May till mid-August. Then there's a short fall till early October, and then winter. We often have snow on the ground by October that stays on the ground till April.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it sounds like Minnesota, where I went to school.
It's very similar to some of the northern states.
But the temperatures are probably colder.
A little bit colder, but Minnesota and North Dakota, that up near the Canadian border, it all gets very cold there too. So it's similar.
Let's see. Here's a question from Bill. If I was to visit, where would you recommend me to go and why?
Well, there's the Baitirek.
That's
So we live in the capital, and the capital is a new city, and it's like a normal city just about anywhere. In the south, in Almaty, which is the old capital, they have mountains. They also have canyons and different things that looks a lot like the national parks in the west, like Utah and Colorado and Arizona. They have a big canyon that's not quite the size of the Grand Canyon, but similar shape. They have a lake that's half saltwater, half freshwater called Lake Balkash. That's also on the border of the different country, Kyrgyzstan. That's a really nice lake up in the mountains. And then in the north of the country, up towards Russia, there are pine forests and hills and mountains. So there are lots of kind of natural things if you like outdoors and camping. They have a lot of adventure and type camping. My wife keeps on whispering all the stuff that we should tell you about. In Kazakhstan, they have the northernmost flock of flamingos that flies here from Africa in early spring in April or May, and they nest here and have their babies before they fly south to Africa for the winter. And so it's the northernmost place that flamingos go in the whole world. So they have a big preserve and a lake with lots of different migratory birds that come through. So that's a unique thing too. There's also history. There's a lot of history from the Soviet Union. Camps used to take people from other countries and other parts of the country and put them here, and prison camps and all that kind of stuff. So lots of interesting history too.
Yeah, and that leads into the next question I was going to ask. Is the people there, is there like a major historical event that they kind of look back on?
So World War II is very, very big. So in this part of the world, it's called the Great Patriotic War. And the Soviet Union was fighting against the Germans since 1941. And many of the people from Kazakhstan in this part of the old Soviet Union went and fought in the war, and a lot of the factories were here in Kazakhstan too, where they were making stuff for the war. So that was a big thing. Genghis Khan is in America. He's Genghis Khan. Here he's Shinggis. Um, but he was in this part of the world. The Kazakhs will say that he was really Kazakh and not Mongolian. So the people here are all descendant from those Mongolian tribes, the Khan. So that's an important part of the history. More recently, Kazakhstan became an independent country in 1991, in December of 1991. So that's a pretty important date for people as well. And also,
Yeah, and go ahead.
Here in Kazakhstan is where the Soviet Union tested their nuclear weapons. And it's also where they launched their space, their program. So they in fact, the U.S. still launches its astronauts from Kazakhstan, and they return to Kazakhstan in the Soyuz capsule. So the space program is very important here, and the government of the USSR tested their weapons here. So there's an area here where people remember that, or kind of anti-nuclear war and anti-nuclear testing and energy because of the nuclear fallout that was part of the testing of those bombs here in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, do you see like the results of that with like mutations in animals, or just desolation in some places, or?
No, there were some health problems and some cancer and that kind of stuff, just like we had in the United States. There was the Nevada test range,
Sure.
and people in my home state of Utah were called downwinders because the radioactive dust blew in, and so there were different kinds of cancers and health problems among a generation of people. And the same thing here. Some of the older generation had some of that, but the effects now are minimal. It's all been contained, and that area is sealed off from people.
All right. Now this one, especially for the kids, what's your favorite part about living where you do?
The freedom.
And travel.
What's the freedom?
We're not helicopter parented. We can go out and yeah.
Like children here have to pay for their own fare and are allowed to go on buses by themselves at the age of 7.
Six. At age 6.
Yes. 6.
So our kids all they do homeschool, but they do all the sports and music and art at a big, they call it the Children's Palace. It's a big activity center basically for kids. That's a few miles from our house. And so before COVID-19, every day of the week except for Monday, they would go out and get on the bus by themselves and go there and spend the afternoon and into the early evening, and then take the bus home. So they had a lot of independence.
Cool. That's awesome.
That's so travel.
And what's your favorite activity you guys did there? Was it more sports or music, or?
Well, we did both, but my favorite was track.
Yeah.
Well, they did figure skating and track were the sports that they did, and so that was fun. They were part of a synchronized skating team that performed at a number of different places, and so that was fun. And then they played guitar and flute, so they had a lot of fun things. Wood carving.
Cool. Well, speaking of music, what wood carving too?
Yeah, 2 of them.
What
did
music is popular in Kazakhstan?
Kazakhstan is in the younger generation. It's pop, so
They
like
have a thing called
K-pop.
Q-pop.
Q-pop and
It's-
K-pop.
Yeah.
So Q-pop is
It's like the Kazakhstan version of K-pop.
Yeah, except for
Those-
K-pop's better.
Okay.
And the older generation instrumental music, so with the traditional instruments.
Violins.
Yeah.
No, like Dambari.
Like
Okay. And
the
what are the traditional Kazakhstan instruments?
Oh, they have a two-stringed instrument that's like a guitar, but it's just one curve.
it looks kind of like a banjo too.
Like a banjo.
Like a
yeah.
guitar banjo
Like
thing.
a smaller and go with two strings going down.
Yeah, it's called the dambara. And kabus is like a violin. It's shaped like
Like a triangle.
Oh,
it's just like the head of a violin that they hold between their knees and play. It's got a lower. It's halfway in between a cello and a violin.
yeah, and then
In
they have
terms
a
of sound.
string,
Like a triangle.
the string instrument which they like pluck with their hands.
yeah, I forgot what that was.
Yeah. Lots of drums and different kind of things that they shape. Flutes. They have a traditional stone flute. Out of pottery, yeah. Yeah.
What? Cool. It sounds like a really rich musical tradition they have there. You guys talked a little bit about figure skating. Are there any sports teams that are big in Kazakhstan? And
Yes.
do people, are people as big into sports in Kazakhstan?
So the biggest sports are
Are
hockey
people as
and
big into sports in Kazakhstan?
hockey and soccer.
Yeah,
Hockey and
that
soccer.
that
Hockey and
different kinds of sports. The most popular sports here are actually boxing,
No.
yeah,
Like
and
the
wrestling. Gennady Golovkin, who's the boxer, he's Kazakh. If you look at the Olympics, many of the weightlifters who win in the heavy weightlifting are Kazakh. So they do a lot of those kinds of sports. But team sports
Are popular among fans.
hockey and football or football,
Is how it's
soccer.
called. Yeah.
are the most popular team
Yeah.
sport. We do have a
do
professional
they
basketball that plays in the Russian VTB league. So it has a lot of players that are kind of fringe NBA players, guys that make summer league rosters and then don't quite make it. A lot of them end up here as well. But it's not very popular.
Yeah.
Are the leagues that they have there, are the people as into them as Americans are into their sports?
Yeah, like the hockey games are lots of fun to go to. Really crazy. They have really good cheering sections and it's loud and fun.
And the team is really good.
And our hockey team is really good. They play in the Continental Hockey League, which is the second after the NHL in terms of quality, and they're always, in the top 6 or 7 teams in the 24-team league. So it's fun, and the games get very intense, and it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Besides sports, what's the other main type of entertainment you guys enjoy?
Well, we like to go to the movies here. The theaters here are cheap compared to American movies.
And you bring your own food.
And you can bring your own food into them without any consequence. So that's fun. So we go to the movies here, and it's good Russian practice for the girls. but we also go 2 or 3 times a year to the opera or a ballet or some sort of cultural thing, because they have a lot of good things here in the capital with the nice theaters and different things. So we do that. The girls don't always like it, but we have to give them some culture. We have our church community here, so we spend time with them and church on Sundays, so that's a big part of our life. And while we've been here, we've traveled to other places. So probably the most fun that we have is being able to travel. We've traveled to Southeast Asia. So where have we traveled in Southeast Asia?
Thailand, Sri Lanka, India, and Vietnam.
And then we traveled this last fall to Uzbekistan, which is the country just to the south of us. And that was a lot of fun. And then we've traveled to Europe. So we've been to
Italy, Spain, Greece, Czech Republic, Poland, and Russia, the part that's in Europe.
Yeah, Moscow and St. Petersburg. So we've done a lot of traveling while we've been here. So that's been a lot of fun.
And that's why we like.
Well, let me try one thing. What happens if oh, that's the wrong. What I did that instead.
Oh,
there. Okay.
yeah,
All right,
everybody.
now I can see all of you better, and I'm not on the screen, but I can see all of you better. Cool. I'm sorry I didn't figure that out sooner.
That's all right.
All right. So, what are your favorite animal that lives there?
This year? Probably the bus.
What does it? Should we say the one that we've seen or the one that we think is the neatest?
Both.
Okay.
Both is good.
Pigeon.
Yeah, flamingos.
Flamingo. The symbol for the country and the sports teams is a snow leopard, which is a really neat big cat. It's related to the lynx and mountain lion. We have a very unique antelope here called the taiga. It's an antelope, but it looks like it has an elephant snout on it almost. They're really kind of unique.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
But probably our favorite is our dog.
Let's see. Your dog's your favorite?
Yeah. She's part of the family, so she has
Cool.
to.
All right, what about, let's see. There's some questions about like cars. Some of the kids want to know about cars. So what side of the road do you guys drive on there?
Well, we don't drive at all.
We go on the
We don't have a
right
car.
side. On the
But
right side.
traffic is on the right side, just like America.
Occasionally, there will be a car with the wheel on the right side instead
Like
of the
the
left
Japanese
side.
cars.
Occasionally, but that's pretty rare.
Yeah. And then occasionally people will go through red lights.
Oh, but people
A
here,
lot, actually. A lot.
the big thing is they don't wear seat belts.
Yeah,
So
no,
if you're in
ever.
a taxi, it's considered rude or something to wear seat belts.
Like you don't trust them.
They stick the seat belts like inside the cushions of the seat, so you can't physically wear a seat belt. So you have to trust the drivers a lot.
Yeah. We don't drive here. We take
Now,
the
do
bus.
most families in Kazakhstan? Okay. Do most native families have vehicles of their own?
It's growing. Probably a majority do now. but in the cities, even people that have cars, a lot of them will take the buses places too.
Or the parents will use the cars to get to work while the
kids take
will
the buses.
bus.
Yeah. But families have
Is
cars.
the
Is the
bus system pretty reliable?
The transportation system?
Is it pretty reliable? Does it work pretty well?
Yeah, we have a really
the public transportation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been really nice.
Let's see. Here's another question. How long is the school day normally? I know you guys are homeschooled now, but is the school day similar to what American kids would have?
In public school, it's from 8 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock, which is the first shift.
It depends,
And then
though.
the second shift is from 2 o'clock until about 6 or 7, depending on what grade you're in. In homeschool, we just do homeschool until we finish school. So we can either finish early in the day or work until late at night.
Some of us have very school. Some of us have very school.
Yeah, you have a Band-Aid, don't you?
Yeah, two
Band-Aids on your foot. Yeah. Speaking of the public transportation, what are the different, is it mainly just buses, or is there like a light rail system there too in Kazakhstan?
So in our city, in the city, we have a bus system, and there are city buses, and then there are buses that go out to the suburbs, so that hook into the city system. They're building a light rail system, but that is that's a big controversy right now, and we don't know when it will be finished. It was supposed to be finished 2 years ago, and it's still only about a third of the way built. But there are also trains that go between the cities, long trains that go between faraway cities, and shorter trains that go between cities that they're like 3 or 4 hours apart, and a really good airport network. So pretty much all the different kinds of transportation. In the old capital in Almaty, there is a subway system as well. So they have a bus and subway system in their city. So and streetcars, tramway. So it really depends. But here in the capital, we just have a bus system, and they're building a light rail.
You said it was controversial. What's the controversy with the light rail?
It has a lot to do with corruption and money disappearing, and it's a project that the Chinese were involved in, and it was so corrupt that the Chinese pulled out, and so now they're trying to finish it because they got just enough done that they can't tear it down, but they really don't. They really don't need it, probably for another 10 or 15 years. But it was in a plan somewhere, and so they built it and started building it. And then when the money got tight for the country, everybody was questioning why we were building it. So it just became kind of a big political albatross that they need to finish, but they don't quite know how right now.
Well, you mentioned that they have an authoritarian government, but it sounds like, at least with this light rail example, they're still held somewhat accountable by the people. How does that work?
None of it has to do with the people. It's just the people in power just shifting allegiances. So the president resigned, and the new president came in. And so part of his establishing his authority was to question why this was done. So the people here can't really protest. The votes don't really matter. So there's a little bit of input from the public, but not much.
Yeah. Political science, then, in a country where there's not, there's not much. It doesn't sound like the people can do much in it.
Yeah.
Um,
So I teach international relations, so I focus on war and conflict and that sort of thing. So I can teach that easily. We teach classes.
for sure, yeah.
Yeah, on authoritarian politics and kind of regional politics. But we also teach courses on American politics and comparative politics, so our students know how democracy works in theory. They just don't really get to see it in practice in their own country. But
Sure.
we do have the freedom to teach them here, which we're kind of unique. So our students get a very different education than students in other universities and other schools here in the country, where all the teachers are paid and beholden to the government. We're independent. We have our own independent budget, and we're independent in what we can do.
That's good. I'm sure that makes it easier to be an American teacher there. Lauren wants to know what type of clothes people wear there.
It depends on the age group. Like older people wear more traditional clothes,
costumes even.
and like the men will wear traditional hats.
The younger.
Okay.
So yeah, you would recognize the fashion as very similar to what you'd see in Europe or in the U.S. The country itself is Muslim, although most people are non-practicing, but there are a number of women who, for instance, wear headscarves. Not very many people wear the full burqa, but a headscarf is quite common for some of the more devout Muslim women. Some of the men wear they have a little cap that they wear on their head that's covers it, like a little lace, kind of almost similar to a skull cap that the Jewish men wear. But in general, most of the people dress in ways that you'd see in Europe or the U.S. Very, very similar.
And then you guys mentioned you went to church there. Are there many Christians in Kazakhstan?
So there are some. The government recognizes Orthodox Christianity, Russian Orthodox Christianity, and Catholicism as official churches because lots of the people that were sent here to Kazakhstan from other parts of the Soviet Union were either Catholic or Orthodox Christian. There was also a large Jewish population here at one time, so there are some mosques and other things here. As far as other kinds of Christianity, and we belong to a church that is not traditional, but we are one of the few Christian churches that are recognized by the government, but only in 2 cities and only with it's a lot of paperwork, and the government sometimes sends people to watch our services, and they follow up on things. So we're very well monitored. So it's very different from kind of the freedom of religion that we're used to in the United States, where that's a freedom that everyone has. Here, you have to prove to the government that you are not extremists. And so it's a very high bar.
Yeah. I can imagine that must be, way different than what you're used to in America. What type of houses do people live in? Your house, looking, from what we can see, it looks like a pretty American house. And you live on the campus of an American university, though, American style university.
Yeah. So but the newer apartments are mostly built in a modern style that would be recognized in Europe or America as far as an apartment style. In the cities, most people live in apartments. Out in the country, people live in houses, but those houses are they're different. They're like villages. So, and there are still people here that live in yurts, which is a round tent that they can pick up and follow the herd. So there are still some people in different parts of the country where the village moves with the cattle throughout the year, and they live in the yurt. The cities are mostly modern, and most people live in apartments in the city.
Okay, here's another question from Amanda. She wants to know, what are some major issues that your government focuses on?
Issues that don't matter. The alphabet.
Oh, the alphabet. Yeah.
Well, so the girls are yelling the alphabet. So that the alphabet.
In
In
the street of
Yeah.
the city.
So the alphabet was originally written in Cyrillic letters from the Russian alphabet. Now they want to make it in Roman letters,
They already made it.
but it's kind of halfway in between. They got started, but I kind of realized how much of a pain it was going to be to teach everybody how to read again and rewrite all the books and everything else. So it's kind of halfway in between right now, both alphabets. When the president resigned suddenly last year and appointed a new successor who was then elected a few months later, but it was the only president the country has had. He was the communist boss when the Soviet Union fell and became the president till now. After he left, they renamed the capital after him and renamed a bunch of streets and all kinds of stuff. So
Within like 3 days of him resigning.
yeah, within
They changed the constitution.
They
in 3
changed
days.
the name of the city overnight.
they changed this. Yeah, they changed the name of the city overnight. They changed. Anyway, it was a big deal. So a lot of times the government focuses on pleasing the people who are in power and not thinking too much about the people who are living. And in terms of
Why don't you actually say?
in terms of geopolitics, relations with Russia and China are very important, right? And very delicate. Kazakhstan has really long borders with China, and the longest border in the world with Russia, right? It's longer than the border between the U.S. and Canada, and so it's a very, very big border. So those two countries are really important for how Kazakhstan deals with other countries.
So then, another question was what's an issue that citizens like debate on, and I guess my question to you is kind of also, my brother spent some time in a country in Africa, and he came back and he said, "Oh, this, it really puts American politics into perspective because." They just say, "Oh yeah, our government's corrupt," and worry about how. Do you kind of see that same attitude in Kazakhstan?
People think a lot that the government is corrupt and ineffective and not for them. At the same time, people expect a certain level of competence from the government, and when it doesn't happen, people get upset. So that there's more freedom here than in some countries that are authoritarian, and people do express their displeasure in various ways. There and different causes that people are interested in. Economics is always a big deal. What prices are like, what healthcare is like. So things that you would be it would be very similar to debates that we have in the U.S. in terms of what policy should be. There's also a lot of kind of discussion about how politics should be and how people should be involved. And there are different people that have different opinions, people that think that the system we have now is better, because who knows what would happen if things opened up, and then people that want more democracy. So it's a lot of it. There's a lot there. It's hard to say what the main things are, because the channels of debate are not open like they are in the U.S. And so a lot of it is this kind of person to person and discussion on the street, and in the home, rather than kind of on television and in the newspaper and that sort of thing like we have in the U.S. But for the most part, people are people, and they're interested in
All right.
how their life could be better, and that's the main question for most of us.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see, just a few last questions. What TV shows are popular there?
TV shows?
Well,
mostly Russian TV shows.
Or are there TV shows that are popular?
So there are soap operas. There are a lot of shows from Korea that are very popular here. The youth really like Korean stuff.
Yeah.
The K-pop, and then the Korean serials. Series, yeah.
Not
But
Yeah.
there are also TV channels that show American shows. So a lot of the kids here like watch Bones and House and Friends and Stranger Things and all, Game of Thrones and all the kinds of stuff that kids and people are watching in the U.S. They watch them here too. So really they're a consumer of worldwide culture. So a lot of stuff from Russia, but a lot of stuff from Korea, a lot of things from the U.S. And then there are local movies and local series and that kind of stuff that they watch too. Maybe not as popular, but there's still lots of people like them. So lots of choices.
Cool. And what, let's see, Gina wants to know, do you guys like TikTok?
we don't know what it is.
We don't let our girls have smartphones yet.
I don't really know.
And
There's still hope.
there's still hope maybe for them. And we're too old, my wife and I. So we don't really TikTok. Sorry, Gina.
That's funny. I have no idea what it is really either. So don't feel bad. And I didn't have a cell phone until I was in college. So and I didn't have a smartphone until just the other year. So and I turned out somewhat okay. So you girls will be fine. Don't worry.
That's what we keep telling them.
Let's see. Let's see. Trying to think. we cover most of the questions and stuff. Is there anything else that we should know about Kazakhstan that we haven't talked about yet?
So
Mom.
Yulia, my wife, says we should talk about apples. So the modern apple originated in Kazakhstan. The name for apples here is Alma,
And there's a city.
and the main city is Almaty, which means the father of apples. So Kazakhstan was also part of the original Great Silk Road, and so it was a hub of different cultures coming from China and Europe into the Middle East, and so it was a crossroads of different religions and different ideas on the Spice Road. It's the 9th largest country in the world, and it's the largest country in the world that doesn't have any access to an ocean. So it's kind of a unique country. What I would say is that the people here in Kazakhstan are really nice. We have felt at home here and felt very lucky to be here. They're really interested in the outside world. So if you do come to visit, I can't remember the name of the kid who asked about if he came to visit. If he did come to visit, people would speak English with him and interested and want to get to know him. People are people all over the world, and we have differences, but we have more that is the same, and the people here are just good people.
That's great. That's good to hear. And that's something that, even that I'm glad you mentioned that, because even though you guys are so far away, and there's the weird game with the chasing and the whipping and the horses and the fermented horse milk and stuff, it's we might think, oh, well, it's so different, but I'm glad you said wherever we go, people are people. The last question then, as we think about you guys in Kazakhstan and both you guys, kind of for you guys especially, but then for the whole country, what are some things we should keep in our prayers?
Well, I think the COVID-19, pray that they find a vaccine, and that they that all of the doctors and nurses who are working are safe and healthy, and that we as people can be wise, follow good directions. Always it's good to keep the leaders of the world in your prayers so that they make good decisions that don't drag us into wars and silly follies. And just for people, that people can find happiness and do the right.
All right, very good. Well, we'll end the broadcast here. Oh, yeah, do you guys have it? Do you girls have anything else to say? No? Okay. All right. Well, we will we'll end the broadcast here. There's my Sophia ducking behind me. Thank you guys so much for your time and being generous. And being generous with that. Well, hang on, don't hang up yet. We'll end the broadcast here. You can say goodbye to the kids. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us, and stay safe there.
All right, will do.
All right. You guys want to do jazz hands with me?